Hari Om. What exactly we mean by mukti or freedom from bondage? Mukti means absolute freedom, total release from all sorts of bindings. And what exactly we mean by bondage? It is the ego, the I thought or the I sense. Ego is the source of all kinds of bondage, and it is the ego which takes birth, cycle of birth and death. Ego is the root cause of cycle of birth and death. Ego is the source of maya and avidya. So, the very nature of ego is to hold on to body and mind and then keep one's mind occupied towards worldly objects, to flow towards the worldly objects. This is the very nature of the ego. Because ego is not interested in its own dissolution in the beginning, but once we show a glimpse of happiness about what lies within the source, the presence of Bhagavan, then our mind or ego itself will naturally be inclined towards being within, turning within. Thereby, ego itself will seek to merge with the presence of Bhagavan, the Atma, Nirguna Brahma. So, this is what we need to do. We need to make our mind understand the great happiness and peace which is there within us by turning within. So we need to make our mind understand that by showing to the mind the kind of peace it can enjoy. How to do that? Whenever we wake up from a good deep sleep, we need to take few moments so that the mind can realize, examine the kind of peace it has been experiencing. So the more the mind experiences such peace and happiness, the mind will naturally be inclined towards turning within, because now it is finding much greater happiness and peace than what it has been experiencing with the worldly objects by flowing outwards externally. So we need to make the mind understand the value of turning within. Then and only then slowly mind will learn to remain within. It is just very similar the way we find some cows which have the habit of grazing on the fields of some other people. Even though there are enough fodder or the grains for the cows to eat in its own backyard. So what we do is we just show a handful of greens to the cows and slowly we make them come towards its place where it needs to stay. Initially they may refuse, but with practice, slowly they will learn to understand, to remain in its place, so that it now knows it will get all the necessary food grains for them to eat. Same way our mind is used to roam around the worldly objects, on the worldly objects. It is because of its wrong notion, because it feels there is so much happiness only in the worldly objects. Now, as we make the mind slowly understand by giving it a taste of the inner peace and happiness, the mind will naturally learn to remain within, because now it finds a higher nature, something of superior level of happiness and peace within. So it will find more inclined now to stay within. That way, gradually, the mind will not leave the presence in due course of time. So, this way, as the attention always centered on the presence within, then naturally the ego sense will get weakened. Because the very nature of the ego is that it cannot stay aloof, stand alone without getting attached to any objects. The more we keep the ego sense, I thought, to stand alone without holding on to external objects, without giving it any room for holding on to objects of the world through our reactions to thoughts, then what happens is naturally, as it stay alone, it will go within and merge with the source, which is the presence of Bhagavan or the Atma. As I said, ego cannot stand alone for a longer period of time. It always needs to hold on to some objects of the external world, so that our mind is going towards the external objects. When we thus make the ego stand alone by refusing to react to any thoughts of the worldly objects, by refusing to react to the worldly perceptions, then the ego, as it remains alone, becomes more and more pure, in the sense that ego will subside for those period of time and remain in Atma. So in those moments, ego remains with Atma, there will be no thoughts and they will be gradually weakened. Ego sense will be gradually weakened in those periods. So the more time, more situations we make the ego to subside into the Atma or the presence of Bhagavan, the more ego sense or the I thought will get weakened. The more they are weakened, the more easier further it will become for us to keep the ego merged with the source. So that way, once the ego sense is totally eradicated by merging in its source, the presence of Bhagavan, existence, consciousness, bliss, Sachidananda, Atma, then naturally our very nature will become mukti, because there will be only presence of Bhagavan within, and we as an individual or the ego sense will cease to exist. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva.